Hey everyone, this is Lisa from Life in Layouts. Today I pulled out my Simple Stories Family Fun collection to document some bowling photos. I also pulled out this Simply Sketches from Scrapbook Generations. It is a 22-page sketches using only 4x6s. And even though the sketch only calls for 4x6 photos, I didn't really do that. However, I did get 12 photos on this layout. My first problem was that my photos weren't 4x6. I had used the true photo size, so it made them just a little bit shorter. My first thought was to just add pattern paper to either side of the two photos on the bottom, but I thought I would worry about that later on. I pulled out this Simple Stories Basics paper. I think I talked about it in another video. I had picked this up at Tuesday morning. They had the pack of 25, and this one has wood grain on one side and a grid on the other. And I felt like that wood grain looked very much like a bowling alley wood grain. For the photos that are on the bottom, it does call for a 4x6 down there. I had a lot of dead space from the bowling alleys and I wanted to get extra photos, so I went ahead and cut the photos a little bit smaller. I didn't do a true 3x4. I really just cut down the extra stuff and figured out the sizes. For the top photos, those photos are of me bowling, and again, there's a lot of dead space. That one photo on the right, I cut down really thin. I was bowling with my friend Anna when I went to visit her in Arkansas, and she was able to capture my super excitement of getting a strike, but the photos weren't that great. She had caught me on the edge of the camera. I cut those two photos down quite a bit and really focused just on me. They're blurry and you can't even see my arms, but you get the gist that I am so excited that I got a strike. This sketch does call for 8 total photos. On the left-hand side, you have 5 photos, 3 portrait 4x6s, and 2 landscape photos. And then on the right-hand side, you have a portrait 4x6, a landscape 4x6, and then this pattern paper with a lot of embellishments on it. So while the sketch itself is very photo heavy, the true embellishments come on this far right-hand panel. The sketch calls for 4 pieces of banner strips over on the far right. Looking through the Simple Stories paper, I picked out the black paper that had the stars on it, that tone-on-tone teal paper, as well as a stripe paper. And then I realized that I needed one more, and so I pulled out this paper that has diamonds in all the colors as well. I was measuring my photos, trying to decide how far from the top and the bottom that I needed to lay out my photos. It was about 1 1/4 of an inch. So I do use my pencil to mark that and then using my T-square ruler to line up the top 3 photos. Then it was time to decide what to do with the bottom photos. Remember, I thought that I could just add a pattern paper to the left and right. Well, then I thought, well, maybe I'll just add a photo to one side of it. But then I found a card that I thought would work perfectly, but that required that I cut down my photos. I wanted to make sure that the space was accurate, so I measured the card and then cut down the photos. I plan to use this card here that says scorecard. Got it all cut out, and then I started looking at it even more and thought, that's not a bowling scorecard. I don't know what I was thinking. So I went back to the drawing board trying to find another card that could work. I looked through the stickers. I even looked at the front cover trying to see if there was something there. But I finally ended up with this orange card that says family, friends, and fun. At the end, I think that that's kind of a perfect card for this. I wanted a finished edge with my photos, and I usually do that by adding a 1/4 inch strip to the top and bottom. I first thought about adding the wood grain that I used over on the right hand side. However, I knew I wanted that strip to span across the entire layout, so the wood grain wouldn't look great next to the wood grain over on the far right. So I thought, why not turn it over and use the grid on the back? But I didn't like the contrast of the grid on the white paper. So I decided to pull out this dark blue tone-on-tone paper with the arrows. I used one of my border punches and then cut the strips down. And I really like the way that that blue contrasts against my photos. My photos don't have a lot of color. While there is some color, the blue and orange along the back wall where the name of the bowling alley is, a majority of the photos are just brown because that's what color bowling alleys are. So having that pop of blue to really pull in the blue from the photos, I think worked really well. Now, if you're a Florida girl like me, especially if you're a Knowles girl, putting these two colors together was a little difficult. Orange and blue is not a color in my wheelhouse, and I avoid it at all cost. But for this layout, I went with it and I just let it go. But I will have to say, go Knowles, because we're definitely not Gators in this household. Once I got the left-hand side of the layout all glued down, I started to work on the right. For this section of the sketch, at the top it calls for a portrait 4x6, and then down at the bottom it calls for a landscape 6x4. Where I put that thin photo of me, it actually calls for a journaling block. But I knew that I could get my journaling done in journaling strips and add it to the left-hand side of the layout where there was so much dead space. And I wanted to add that photo instead. Then I added the wood grain down, and of course, I can't cut anything straight, so I had to pull out my T-square ruler and my X-Acto knife to cut down that wood grain just a little bit. I started to add the wider strips to that wood grain, but then remembered that I needed to add that blue 1/4-inch strip to the top and bottom. And again, the blue looks so good against the contrast of that wood grain. For some reason, I forgot to cut out a 4th one, so I had to go back and do that. And then adding adhesive to the back of it and adding it to the top of the layout. Then I pull out my ruler and my poker tool because you guys know what's coming next. I'm going to stitch. And I actually don't stitch a whole lot. The sketch called for a square to be on the inside of that wood grain paper. I use a 6-strand embroidery and I pull it apart so there's only 3 strands. This is my personal preference. I know some people use 2 strands and some people use 3. Some people even use the full 6. This is where I say you do you. I like the thickness of a 3-strand. Plus it gives me the opportunity to get more from my embroidery thread. That little paisley tin that's right next to my layout, I picked that up on Amazon. It's magnetic, so all of my needles stick to the bottom of it, which is really nice that they don't fall out. And then it also holds my little threaders. I don't know what they're actually called, but you use them to help thread your needles. Both the threaders and that box can be found in my links below from Amazon. They are affiliate links, so just know that it is no cost to you, but I do get a small commission for those. I do like to tie knots on the back of my layouts, and so that's what I'm doing here, as opposed to using washi tape. I just feel like it is just less work. However, sometimes my threads are a little short, and I do secure it with washi tape. Now that I've got my stitching done, I can start working on the strips of paper. I started by cutting the strips down a little bit, and I probably shouldn't have done this because I pulled out my Stampin' Up! Banner punch. I have both sizes of the Stampin' Up! Banner punch. The larger size does cut a significant amount off of the edges. I think they got smarter when they created the smaller banner and didn't cut off as much. So the banner strips are a little bit shorter than I would have liked, but I just went with it. I start out with the tone-on-tone teal paper because I knew that I wanted that as a back layer. I then laid the 2 most colorful ones, which is the black one with the stars and then the white one with all the colorful diamonds, on top of the teal. And then on top of the star paper, I added the stripes. And I feel like I have a good contrast between the solids and the very colorful paper. I had to pull out my T-square ruler, and even with that, I struggled to get these strips on straight. Now the sketch calls for just 1 4x6 photo in this area, but I actually ended up getting 3. I go ahead and add the larger photo up on Fun Foam using my ATG as well as some liquid adhesive, and then underneath it, I overlap these 2 photos. Again, there's a lot of dead space in it, but it's really just showcasing my excitement for getting a strike. Now it's time to embellish. I have several of the embellishment pieces from the Simple Stories Family Fun collection, and I just pulled out anything that I thought could work with bowling. On the right-hand side, I do decide to add Let's Bowl, and I'm going to use that as my title. I do put that piece up on Fun Foam because I was overlapping it on my photo, which was also on Fun Foam. So I spend a few minutes making sure that I have the Fun Foam in the right place so that it lays nicely on top of the photo. Then on the left, it calls for a small cluster to break up the photos. I had a lot of dead space in that center photo, so I added some bowling pins as well as a bowling ball. Then back over on the right, I added a green and blue star, and then started looking through the word phrase stickers. But I couldn't find anything that I liked. So I went back to the sticker book. I found the sticker that has bowling pins on it, and the ball is like hitting the bowling pins, and then there's like a starburst behind it, which to me represents a strike. And since I was so excited in those photos, I felt that was the perfect spot for it. I also found another bowling pin and ball, and I added it right above the photos next to those stars. On the left, I added the word phrase that says little bit of crazy and a whole lot of love. And then on the right, I added a sticker that says strike up the fun right on top of the photo of me celebrating my strike. And then underneath the photo, I used the sticker that says having fun. I added some enamel dots to all of the clusters. And then that is it for this video. Here is my final layouts as well as some close-ups. I love when I can get 12 photos on a layout. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already and you want to see more double page layout inspiration, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope that you have a scrappy day.